So let me make a quick video about the difference between metaphor and simile. This is something I notice a lot of students seem to remember this probably from a quiz or a test in high school. And a metaphor is saying this thing is this thing, and a simile is saying this thing is like this thing. Or sometimes a simile uses the word as. He is as tall as a tree. There's usually those two as's in there, right? She's as old as the hills. He's as dumb as a rock, right? He is dumb like a rock. Those are both similes. So I guess the basic point of this video is I think ultimately the difference between these two figures of language is not really that big. In each of them, you have, as I said in the last video, one thing being compared to another thing in order for the reader to get some kind of new information about whatever the writer's writing about. So, it's good to know this distinction. I'll probably make it a question on the quiz just so everyone has it in the back of their mind. But I don't see it as ultimately that different, a metaphor versus a simile. I think a metaphor can be more powerful. Let's go back to Juliet is the sun. Doesn't it sound a little more powerful to say Juliet is the sun as opposed to saying Juliet is like the sun? I feel it's just more powerful to just say she is the sun. Now, the funny thing is a metaphor is, as I said in the last video, it is technically a lie because Juliet is not actually the sun, right? And so in a way, the simile is a more truthful way of comparing the two. You're saying Juliet is like the sun. It's actually literally what a comparison is doing. You're showing the likenesses or what is alike between two things. He is tall like a tree. He's as tall as a tree. What if you just say, in that case, you could just say, he is a tree. It's an interesting metaphor. It might not be clear that you're talking about height if you went for the metaphorical version of that. So you can play around with these things, but as a final thought for this video, my basic feeling about this is metaphors and similes are both ways in which we compare two things in language for a reason. They're both ways in which we talk about one thing in terms of the other. But you can, when you're writing, you can play around with these and see if one works better than the other. Maybe you want that kind of confident, poetic sounding moment. Juliet is the sun. Or maybe you want to draw a little more attention to the fact that two things are being compared. He sat up straight as a ruler. Okay, that's a simile, and it provides a pretty good visual image of someone sitting up straight, right? And again, there's the power of metaphors and similes, is they make an image clear to the reader. It's almost a shorthand for describing something very literally. You could say, he changed his posture so that it went from a slouch to sitting up very straight. But notice that it has a lot more punch to say, he sat up straight as a ruler, right? The second version has a little more oomph, it's a little bit more of a concrete image when the reader hears it, right? Rather than just hearing a bunch of literal language that describes the process of slouching and then sitting up straight. So these are things to think about as you go through writing projects and think about maybe salting in a few metaphors or similes to liven things up and give your writing some color.